Welcome back to my YouTube channel, 12 Things That Are Not Good for Your Brain. Our brains are like great machines used for thinking, perceiving, and knowing the world and everything in it. But just like most machines, they need maintenance and investment to ensure they work optimally throughout. In this video, I'll show you some simple vices that negatively affect the functioning of your brain. What once were normal habits could be quietly sabotaging your cognitive functions without you realizing it. With this knowledge of the negative consequences and some positive modifications, you can protect your brain and keep young. Well, without any further ado, let's plunge deep into understanding habits that damage the brain and how to maintain a healthy brain. Before we proceed any further, all the contents of this video are free from any sort of bias, and the information provided has been vetted by credible sources and certified health practitioners. With that said, let me get started and move right into explaining the 11 habits that are bad for your brain. Number 1. Multitasking. Studies show that multitasking impacts our brains in many ways and makes us less productive in what we are doing. It is easy to consider handling several tasks at once efficiently, but it is not as simple as it appears. Every time we try to multitask, we are moving from one task to another within a very short space of time, therefore making the overall productivity decrease as the brain gets overloaded. Such frequent change not only affects concentration but also RSVP, the brain's capacity to memorize. Different research findings show that multitasking can reduce our efficacy and efficiency as well as productivity levels, since it brings about more mistakes than focusing on one job at a period. They also require some continual period before they can switch from one type of activity to another. This is just the kind of time that would accumulate when we are always multitasking, hence lowering our productivity rate. However, multitasking, which means handling several tasks at the same time, is also very destructive to our health and well-being, and could lead to high levels of stress, anxiety, and fatigue. Moreover, quality is not the best result when the focus is split into various tasks. Complex jobs that need the brain to devise and strategize involve the solving and envisioning processes, which suffer a lot of setbacks when one multitasks. This can result in a downsizing of the innovative solutions to the problems that we are facing, and a detailed analysis of the problematic tasks. Number 2. Smoking. Tobacco use is not only bad for the lungs, it is bad for the brain as well, or for learners specifically. Scientific work on the topic indicates that smoking hurts the brain, which results in memory loss and lack of reasoning, among other things. Nicotine and other chemicals in smoke can cut overflow of blood to the brain, depriving it of necessary oxygen and nutrients. This deprivation has been known to cause various neurological disorders such as dementia, as well as Alzheimer's disease. Smoking has also been associated with the decline of the gray matter of the brain. This is the all-important tissue that processes information and draws conclusions. It is a known fact that long-term smokers lose the bulk of this important brain substance and hence may experience loss of some brain functions. Furthermore, smoking is a habit that can lead to the occurrence of stroke through the denial of blood supply to the brain or the development of tiny blood vessel tears. It is also very destructive to the brain, not only for active smokers, but also even for secondhand smokers. Non-smoking subjects exposed to secondhand smoke have been evidenced to suffer from impaired learning and memory. Number 3. Lack of sleep. Sleep deprivation is bad for your brain in many ways apart from increasing the risk of developing chronic diseases. If you are habitually depriving your body of sleep, your brain will never be given the chance to regenerate and restore itself. This can cause any number of cognitive impairments that can impact your focus, your decision-making, and your memory. According to other research, lack of sleep is also associated with other severe diseases like Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia. Lack of sleep has an effect on your emotions, and you become easily moved to anger or else turn into a depressed person. Sleep also has a bearing on the synthesis of essential hormones in the body which govern nearly all metabolic processes, one of which is the control of appetite and stress in the body. Research has indicated that sleep deprivation can disrupt the normal secretion of those hormones that control hunger, making one feel hungrier than usual, and thus likely to gain weight. Do you like our video so far? Please remember, before proceeding to the next bad habit, please do not forget to like the video below, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you will always be the first one to know our newest uploaded informative video. Number 4. Isolation and loneliness. Two seemingly ordinary feelings, isolation and loneliness, can greatly affect our brains, as many often consider them as only emotions. As important as food, water, sex, and many other things in our lives, this great invention called the human brain has one major element, which is social interaction. When we stay alone, we also deprive our brains of the necessary stimulation they require to work properly. Research has also pointed out how stress and anxiety occur as a result of prolonged isolation and impact various dangerous effects on the brain. The basic structures of the brain can be changed and affected in its overall ability to perform tasks such as memory or learning, as well as controlling emotional responses. Further, social isolation increases the chances of getting mental ailments, including depression and cognitive impairing ailments. On the other hand, loneliness has similar outcomes in terms of the extent and impact. Lewis and Friedman, 2014. Loneliness can bring out the stress response of the body, and largely prolonged stress can cause chronic inflammation and a compromised immune system. This does not only have an impact on the brain, but the overall physical health and well-being of an individual are at stake as well, which is an implication. Number 5. Skipping breakfast. We often hear that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and now, according to research, this is true for the health of our brains. Many people have probably adopted the habit of avoiding breakfast in the name of saving time. This is very dangerous to our brains. Our brains need nourishment all day, and with the abstinence from breakfast, our brains are left starved. A study points out that a lack of breakfast precipitates a reduction in concentration levels, low energy levels, and poor memory retention. We also understand how important breakfast is for the body, as it helps to control the levels of blood sugar. If we eat properly in the morning, we cannot feel sleepy or angry. This couple makes it difficult or impossible to concentrate, and further complicates it to do such tasks that demand the flexibility of the mind. Not having breakfast can affect mood and emotional stability, and experience stress more often, and may easily switch from one mood to another. In the long run, it can cause a general slowdown in thinking and a decrease in mental defenses. Number 6. High sugar consumption. Our diet determines our health status in the society we live in today, where everyone races against time most of the time. Another unhealthy behavior that affects our brains adversely is taking a lot of sugary products. Sweet foods may offer short-term pleasures, but overconsumption of high-sugar foods may indeed harm our brain's abilities and impair our learning. It also means that when we consume an excess of sugars, this will lead to swings in our blood glucose levels, which may make us feel the energy drain and become moody. Further, elevated sugar consumption appears to trigger inflammation in the brain that may affect one's memory and learning capacity. Moreover, excessive intake of sugar may lead to insulin insensitivity, and this is likely going to make the patient develop complications such as type 2 diabetes. This hurts the state of the brain, which can cause loss of cognitive functions, as well as other neurological disorders. We should be careful with the amount of sugar we consume and try to seek natural products that will benefit our brains later in life. Number 7. Sedentary lifestyle. This relatively recent culture of sitting or even languishing for many hours can be very injurious to the brain and the entire body. A recent study has shown that sedentary behavior is associated with an increased risk of deteriorating memory and poor cognitive function. Thus, it is high time to understand the effects of this behavior on our brains. Whenever we have to sit for long hours, whether at our places of work or during leisure time, the blood supply in the brain reduces, and hence, its functioning is affected. In addition, a sedentary lifestyle commonly encompasses other antecedent pathologies, including abnormal nutrition and sleep patterns that lead to cognitive decline and other brain dysfunctions as well. Third, the motor inactivity characteristic of the sedentary lifestyle is conducive to an imbalance of neurotransmitters partly responsible for regulating stress and anxiety. Such a disruption of brain chemistry can also affect other aspects of mental processes, rational judgment, analysis, focus, etc. Number 8. Chronic stress. That chronic anxiety equals tension, worry, and unease isn't only detrimental to your mental health, it's also a nasty habit that does your noggin a plentiful disservice. Cortisol is similar to having an unwanted guest showing up in your head and moving in, staying for far too long, and causing damage. The hippocampus, which has a crucial role in the brain, is one of the organs influenced by chronic stress. It is indeed very important because this little structure plays a role in memory and learning. But interestingly, this is capable of shrinking in size when subjected to stress continuously. It's like having muscle atrophy from lack of use when it is needed for a marathon. It's worth noting that the hippocampus determines your memory and how well you can learn new things. Therefore, if you possess a smaller hippocampus, then you can be certain that your memory is not as good as it could be. But chronic stress also affects the amygdala, or as it is also known, the emotional command center of the brain. It can become overactive and increases your vulnerability to anxiety and fear. Also, pH-level regulatory hormones, including cortisol, can impair neurons and their preserving links. They can impair your brain ability and even lead to other health problems such as depression. Number 9. The other is very closely related to the previous one and can also be defined as the misuse of substances. Especially alcohol affects your brain chemically, and when you go for a drink or two or many more beyond your recommended amount, these chemicals and processes are disturbed in the short term and in the long term too. In the short term, it can alter any of 3 key mental aptitudes: understanding, coordination, and retention, thus making it tough to think logically or in an enunciated manner. This leads to cases where you are likely to get involved in accidents in case you hurt yourself, or get involved in activities that are dangerous that you wouldn't do under the influence of alcohol. They also pointed out that when they take alcohol in large amounts for a long time, they are likely to suffer serious consequences in their brains. It has been reported that marijuana use can result in impaired ability to learn, concentrate on tasks, remember things, and solve problems. Few also indicate marijuana has been shown to alter the structure and functioning of the brain. Consequently, alcohol production in the body can cause neurological disorders such as alcohol-related dementia and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which are miserable, significantly lowering your cognition and quality of life. Alcohol also impacts the neurotransmitter systems of the brain, which may demy the functions that control mood, and a heightened possibility of anxiety or depression and other mental health problems. It also leads to the development of alcohol use disorders that also have even worse impacts on brain health. Number 10. Lack of mental stimulation. The idea here is that people ought to address their brain in the same way they do their muscles, as in, train it. Just like the rest of your body needs exercise, the brain also needs exercise if it is going to work optimally. If you find yourself going through a period where you are not challenging your mind much, you are just letting your brain atrophy, or in more simple terms, let your brain be lazy. The brain is most able when it is happily engaged in meeting demands and learning new things. If left idle and not supplied with mental exercises, it starts to laze around, and some assets of your brain may become rusty. These problems may produce memory impairment, cognitive and learning disorders, and poor problem-solving ability. A lack of stimuli can also lead to feeling bored and dissatisfied, etc. More strongly, your brain needs novelty and change, and when the novelty and change are missing, it causes negative emotions and a feeling of boredom in life. Luckily, there are so many opportunities to challenge the brain that it's not particularly challenging at all. Some of the increases involve such tasks as reading, puzzles, learning a new skill, or even talking with other people, all of which offer the stimulation needed for the brain. That is why it is always important to point your mind to more problems. The more it gets into trouble, the better it gets. Number 11. A poor diet. Malnutrition impairs your brain and impairs your brain. Thus, any deficiency necessarily affects eating habits. The constant ingestion of unhealthy foods like processed snacks, sugary products, and high-fat meals would also affect our cognitive functions and would trigger mental diseases. There is evidence that consuming foods with high levels of processed sugar and saturated fats can cause inflammation of the brain that, in turn, might hurt memory, learning, and the ability to regulate emotions. Further, the deletion of other essential ingredients known as omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals, so important in enhancing brain development and functioning, also acts as a hindrance to cognitive processes. Such deficits may manifest themselves as impaired ability to focus, short-term memory impairment, and impaired executive function. As for twos, Poor dietary habits lead to some diseases in later life, such as Alzheimer's and dementia. When people take the Mediterranean Dash diet, which is comprised of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein, and small portions of meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy products, they have better mental health and focus. The dense foods supplied the raw materials for neurotransmitters and improved the brain cell discussion between and the general brain functions.